Hey everybody, and welcome to the playthrough. This is part 2 of our Root How to Play video. What we're going to talk about here is the Root Riverfolk expansion to the game of Root. So basically, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Lizard Cult and about the Riverfolk Company. If you're looking for how to play the actual base game of Root, then you can go ahead and click the link above and it'll take you to our How to Play video for Root itself. If you already know how to play Root with the expansion characters, you can go ahead and click the other link and it'll take you to our discussion of the video. So what we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk first about the Lizard Cult, and then we're going to talk about the Riverfolk Company. So a little bit of the theme, the Lizard Cult is essentially like some Cthulhu-esque acolytes. They're basically an evil cult that is trying to raise a dragon that is supposed to help them destroy the whole forest. So if you kind of think of it as Cthulhu, you know, they're trying to raise their great ancient one, and they're a bunch of nut jobs. And then the Riverfolk Company are actually war profiteers who are trying to prolong the conflict in order to make a lot of money. So like we did in the first video, we'll just go through the different phases and talk about the unique abilities of each of these two factions. So the Lizard Cult, a few things first. Whenever a Lizard Cult warrior is defeated when he's defending an area, then they come off the board and they will go into the Acolytes box. So let's say the cat killed this Lizard Folk here, he'd come into the Acolytes box. Now what you can do is you can use Acolytes during your turn in order to perform some unique abilities that only the Lizard Folk can do. Another interesting thing about them is they hate birds. So where the other factions have bird cards as wilds, the lizards don't actually get to use bird cards as wilds, which can be a little bit of a hindrance to them, but it'll make sense a little later. And then finally, they have the ability to rule any clearing where they have a garden. Usually you need the most units and tokens in an area in order to rule it. The lizard folk, all they need is a garden in order to rule a clearing. So that's kind of the first unique things about it. Let's go through their phases now, the birdsong, the daylight, and the evening phases. So the first thing that they do is they adjust their outcasts. So if you see here, there's this little stack of cards and it's called the Lost Souls. Now what you do is you look at your Lost Souls pile and say, which of the 3 clearing types is there the most of? So in this case, there's 2 foxes and 1 mouse. So the fox clearing is going to become the new outcast clearing. So if you see here, we'd slide this little token over to the fox clearing and that would become the outcast clearing. If it's the second time in a row that it's been the outcast clearing, then you'd flip it over and it becomes a hated outcast, and that just gives you a little bit of an extra bonus. The next thing you do is you discard all the cards in your Lost Souls pile, so all the cards that are in there are going to go to the discard pile. And then finally, in the birdsong, you can perform conspiracies. And these are the actions that you can take with your little acolytes. So the 3 conspiracies that you can take are Crusade. You need 2 acolytes to do this, but you can spend 2 acolytes to battle in any outcast clearing, or you may move from any outcast clearing and then may battle in the destination clearing. So that allows you to move or do battle. The next thing you can do is you can convert. You can spend 2 acolytes to remove an enemy warrior in an outcast clearing and place one of your own there. So this is basically converting the other woodland creatures to your satanic cult. You can sanctify as your final one. You can spend 3 acolytes to remove an enemy building in an outcast clearing and place a garden there. So if I had 3 acolytes in here, I could actually remove them in order to take, say, this sawmill from the cats off the board and replace it with a bunny garden. And that's one way that the lizard cult can get points. Or this will help the lizard cult get points. So let's go to the daylight phase, and this is where some of the really interesting stuff happens with them. So if they have a hand of cards, let's just say they have 3 cards, you can reveal any of these cards from your hand to take actions. Now, like I said before, the bird cards aren't wilds, but they can still be used. So the first thing you can do is you can play a card or you can reveal a card, and any revealed cards will go into your Lost Souls pile. So you can reveal a card to build in that clearing, recruit in that clearing, or score points for your gardens in those clearings. So if, for instance, I had a bunny card in my hand, let's find one here really quick. If I had a bunny card in my hand and I have that bunny garden out, I can use this to either build in a bunny clearing, recruit a unit in a bunny clearing, or I can use it to score points based on how many of that type of garden I have out. And that's the only way that the lizard folk can score points, aside from the normal ways like destroying buildings and tokens of other people. Finally, if you have a bird card, you can sacrifice, which means you can move one of your lizard folk off the map and put them in the acolytes box for each card that you play. Then, if we go to the evening phase, you return all revealed cards, so any cards that were in your Lost Souls pile at this point would come back into your hand. You can craft using gardens matching the outcast suit, so they're kind of limited on how much they can craft. Then you draw one card, plus one card for every little card symbol showing, and those are underneath your gardens. And then you have to discard down to 5 cards. So basically what the lizard folk do is they have to spend their cards in order to basically buy points for how many gardens they have out on the board. So if you have a lot of clearings, like bunny clearings with gardens in them, you're going to want to use your bunny cards in order to score points. And they can jump up really fast sometimes if the person who's playing them really knows what they're doing. All right, so that's the lizard cult. Let's move over to the Riverfolk Company. The Riverfolk Company, just like every other faction in this game, is incredibly unique. So one of the first things that you have to know about the Riverfolk Company is that their entire hand of cards is public knowledge. So other factions, they can't show other people their cards, but the Riverfolk Company has to. And the reason for that is because the Riverfolk Company can sell their services to the other players. So the first thing we need to look at here is this track here. So services, you use these little trackers to determine how much the other players have to pay you in order to buy your services. And there's 3 different services. There's the hand card, they can buy a card out of your hand. Riverboats, which allows them to use the rivers as paths. And mercenaries. What the mercenaries do is it allows other factions to use your little otter meeples as their own soldiers so that they can fight other people. So the way that the other players pay the Riverfolk Company is they take meeples from their reserve and they pay them to the Riverfolk Company for each service that they're taking. And they can take one service, they can buy one service if they control a clearing where the Riverfolk have a trading post there. So that's kind of how the payment and the selling of the services works, which is very unique to and very different from the way that the other factions work. So let's go through their phases now. So the Birdsong, the first thing you do is protectionism. If your payments box is empty, you can put warriors in there. That's just if nobody pays you for anything in a whole round and you don't have any guys, then you can add 2 of your own in there, which is good because you need those in order to take actions later on. Next thing you do is you score dividends. So for how many meeples you have in your funds box, which is the middle box, you score points for every 2. So if I had these guys in my funds box at the start of my turn, I would get 2 points because there's 4 of them. Then you gather funds. So if there are any meeples in these other boxes, they come into the funds box. And then you go to the daylight, and this is where you kind of have to balance. Do you want to spend the meeples that are in your funds box to take actions, or do you want to leave them there and score points with them later on? So the first thing you can do is you can move. So you can commit a fund, and this is the commitments box on the bottom. You move them down here in order to take certain actions. You can commit a fund to move, which just like other movement, you can move your otters from area to area. They're not restricted to the river or anything. You can move them wherever you want. You can commit a fund to do battle. So even though other people can use your guys, you can still fight them if you want. You can craft, meaning you have to take things from the funds box and put them on these trade posts here. So if, for instance, I have these trade posts out, I can put one here in order to craft a fox card, or one here to craft a bunny card. You can commit them to draw cards, and this is important because the more cards you have, the more options other people have to buy from you, and you want people to buy your stuff. You can spend them, so spending means you return it to the owner. So I can return this to the owner to place more units out on the board in areas that those owners control. Or I can spend, say these are still in my funds box, I can spend 2 in order to build a trade post in an area that that player controls. So for instance, if I take these 2 birds out of my funds box to build a trade post, I look over there, the birds own a bunny clearing, I could take this off and put a trade post there. Now, that's all the actions that they can take with their funds, and that's their daylight phase. Then we go to the evening phase. First, they just discard down to 5 cards, so unfortunately they can only ever hold 5 cards. And then finally, you can adjust the cost of your services. You can bump them up or bump them down. It's completely up to you, and you kind of have to read the other players and see what it is that they want in order to determine how much you want different things to cost. And that's how you play the Riverfolk, and that is how you play the Riverfolk expansion for Root. And that's how you play Root. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you head on over to the PlayThru.net to check out our other content, and stay tuned for the discussion portion of this video.